Welcome to the Wellness Rebel Show, where you reclaim your health and tap into your body's healing power. I'm your host, Fatima, here to empower you with the knowledge and tools to take charge of your well-being. Whether you want to boost energy, improve mindset, or unlock vitality, this is your go-to source for practical advice and inspiration. It's time to step into your power and live a life of health and freedom. Welcome to the revolution. Welcome back to the Wellness Rebel Show. Today I have Scott Burgess. He's a naturopath, holistic health coach, and founder of Balanced Naturopathics. Welcome, Scott.
Appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for being on here. Now, before we start, can you share about your story, how you got here?
I'll keep the medium to low version of it, and then we can go from there. Before I started Balanced Naturopathics, I started off in healthcare, where I was people would call like a CapEx insider, meaning I would work with all the CEOs and all the C-level suite folks, world-renowned surgeons, and for the most part, most up and down the East Coast, although a national coverage as well, where I'd be designing patient towers, and my focus was the hybrid operating room, where that's a general operating room, and then you have the integrative space where it would be an IMRI or intraoperative CT or an imaging center, and you would basically smash those together. And that's what the healthcare space would call the hybrid operating room. And I was my early part of my career, I was one of 6 people in the world that knew how to fully integrate and put together an intraoperative CT, where they would do, brain surgeries, tumor removals, things of that nature. Worked Johns Hopkins, Duke, Mass General, all the big ones, up and down the East Coast. And I was traveling around a lot, covering that one segment. And then, of course, I expanded into interventional radiologies, EP labs, etc. Got to see a lot. And the abbreviated version of that is, I noticed, even as a CapEx insider of the hospital, but external to the hospital, that a lot of the same people and patients were coming back. And I started asking questions. I was like, so what the hell is going on? If you're fixing them, like, why do they keep coming back? Like, what's happening? And I wouldn't say it's my signature story, but it's one that was burned into my memory because it's the first time. I don't know if you've ever seen anyone who looked like they wanted to, or they really wanted to not be here on this world anymore. I was in DC at one of the medical centers there, and part of the process was that when you go into a hospital, you work with the surgeons in their real space, in real time, and you're looking at some of the difficulties or some of the improvements that they're looking to make for the next build. Now, when that goes on, you're just asking the questions, you're taking notes, and you're getting dimensions of the space. But you always look at the board. You always look at the board on the OR, and you look at what surgeon you'll be working with, so you can basically tally up what questions that need to be answered as a priority. And then additional to that, you want to make sure that you're looking at the type of procedure, because although you have all this technology and modalities inside that space, it always comes back down to the patient, no matter what. Like, period, full stop, because those modalities support the patient at the bed. Mm-hmm. So you have to find out, of course, now again, you don't talk about this information because it's PHI, but you'd see the patient name, and you would see the disorder or the type of procedure that's going on. So I remember asking, I said, so what's this one particular part? It was a thoracic-based surgery. And they said, oh, it's a diabetic. And I said, oh, okay, cool. What are we doing? Well, we have to remove some gangrene. Oh, okay. Do you want to tell me about that? Is there something I need to know as I capture my notes? And what ended up happening was, they're like, well, it's a sad story. They started at the toe, and I'm going to keep it clean. They kept going up the leg. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. And everyone hears of diabetes and all that kind of stuff. Again, to keep it vanilla. But you never really see the impact of it. So the patient comes out of holding, and I saw this person for the first time, who was a woman, and I never forgot her eyes. And she just didn't want to be here, because they had gone pretty far up her leg. It hadn't stopped. And just to give you a perspective of time, that was on a Thursday. I came back Monday again to restart my own cycle as far as capturing data, as far as what needed to happen for the next build for this new tower that was going up. And she was coming back to surgery again. And I was heavily, one, concerned and disappointed because I had a family member who had diabetes. And I was like, is this going to happen to them? And I just saw that my family member in my mind. And that changed everything for me. It changed everything altogether. And I never forgot it. And from that point, I realized and had my own aha moment. I was like, the system's not broken. It's working exactly as designed. And from that point, I went back to school and I started studying everything that I could that was just different, natural, atypical, you name it, and until I literally created my own ecosystem to a point. And the way I describe it is, which I believe is kind of funny, is you and I both old enough will remember the doctor that would do house calls. And he was a jack of all trades. And that doctor knew exactly what was going on and if they had to refer you out. Because there wasn't a lot of specialists at that point. This one person could basically handle all of it. I went, we need to go back to that. And that's what I created with Imbalanced. So what I did was I focused on not just food, but stopgaps on how to get someone from their current state to where they want to go. And I put all the different intangibles within there that would get them there. And it's very different and it works. And most of the time, and this is not coming from me because I'm just the person delivering the message, but I purposely give my clients the presupposition of, look, most clients need to see me only 3 to 4 times. I'm usually solving the issues within 1 or 2 visits. Doesn't really matter how extensive they really are. I would say the longest I have right now, just because it just takes time, and I can give an example of this. I had a client who, I have a client still, he's still a client now, where he had been taking finasteride for 24 years. And finasteride is essentially Propecia for men. And what ended up happening was something that was promoted to help hair growth, and he took it as just a preventative. And no one really educated him on what the outcomes would be long term. I can definitely go through that because I've become kind of like a science nerd when it comes down to chemistry. From that point, he had acute alopecia. His hair just started falling out. Now, one of the signature elements as far as what my protocol would be is that you need to donate blood, at least in the beginning part of your protocol. You need to donate blood every 8 weeks. And I call it the human oil change. And that's usually due to some high iron toxicity or high bacteria count. And it's the fastest way, just like a fire hose, of getting what we would consider toxins or just overburden of organisms, which are not bad. They're just, it's an unbalanced, which is why I call my business balanced. And so he's going, and when I went there and I'm sitting down, and you'll actually look at one of the medications that you are not allowed to donate, they will reject you if you go sit down to try to donate blood, is finasteride. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. And so I went in, started doing my research on finasteride, and the reason why, because it causes abnormalities in fetuses. And I was like, that is absolutely crazy. And they're prescribing this drug, pharmaceutical, to men as a preventative for hair loss. So again, I started looking at the data, and right now, actively between 2023 till today, there's about 2.5 million men who are prescribed finasteride, and that's not even including women, for women who have acute hair loss as well. And that's the result. And that's just one medication. So the algorithm that I put together, what I call the health equation, is I developed an app. It's called My Deficiencies, and this is just one segment of it. Is I started getting really irritated because I was looking at the regulations between what the medications were that were being prescribed to people and what all those regulations were and why they were allowed to be released to market. Then I looked at synthetic vitamins at the same time. And a lot of the biohackers, they don't like this because it exposes a lot. Now, I know, I'm pretty sure, and if you don't, it's okay, know about synthetic vitamin D. It's actually not doing anything that it's promoted to do. I would imagine, I would hope to think anyways, that most people would know this. Well, the scary part is we've known since 1927 that this is from Dr. Montrose Burroughs, that vitamin A and vitamin D, if they're not synergistically aligned, what will end up happening is that there'll be an imbalance, which then will form a negative K2 response, which means that calcium and all those different other minerals that need to be absorbed appropriately throughout the body start misbehaving. And that misbehavior is what we call heart attacks or clogged arteries and plaque and all that kind of stuff. So when you looked at all the data and how early it was presented versus the data now, when you look at all the research, I said, man, something needs to be done. So I developed an app called My Deficiencies where you can plug in any medication, and I made it stupid simple. I mean, it's really fun. I think it's all data driven, so I love it. But anyone could use the app, go to their doctor, type in the medication or multiple medications, and get a full report of what the actual effects. And this is where I like to separate language, because language is very important. It's not a side effect. A side effect is a marketing buffer to lower the mental burden of what people will justify. But the problem there is people are in such pain that they're willing to do it, and they're like, oh, I'll stop it later, but they never really do because they don't know the outcomes. And what My Deficiency does very well, it lists out a mitochondrial burden score, an oxidative stress score, an an iron copper score, a gut dysbiosis score, and it literally will tell you what the result will be as a result of taking those medication in the short term and the long term. So you can make an educated guess. And when I was asked before, and a lot of people asked me, like, well, what do you think about just medications in general? I said, they're not bad as long as you have transparency. But the thing is, and here's the catch, if you're not willing, and I'm not saying you, but I'm saying if the person's not willing to make the other adjustments along with the medications, it's not going to end well, period. It's just not. So I have a basic protocol that once you understand it, you go, and it includes emotional intelligence as well, because most people don't recognize that the body only has 3 modes, and that's structural, functional, and chemical. And every level has a different onset as far as how it performs and how it behaves in relationship to every other one. So I have precursors that are free. And the reason why is I know early before this podcast, we were talking about my own podcast when I had it before. One of my biggest episodes was medical bankruptcy. And there's no specific category for medical bankruptcy. It's just bankruptcy and due to the overall woman cost there. But if people knew what the outcomes would be long term, it always ends up in that bucket. And you have to be really cognizant and really sharp before you agree to do anything. So when I go back to my 3 pillars, the reason why I keep them free, because most of the people who get into financial trouble when it comes to the whole medical bankruptcy bucket, or people who would be approaching that, don't have the financial resources anyways. So I developed what I call the 3 pillars, which is blood donation every 8 weeks, and that goes for a certain amount of times based on what the disorder is or what the need is. Then you have stop all synthetics, period, full stop, none. And if you actually looked into vitamins and what they're promoting or marketed to do versus what they're not, and then you look at the manufacturing processes and the chemicals that are actually being used, you would think otherwise to use them. And then the third one, which is really simple, is proper hydration. That's it. And if you read the book, The Body's Many Cries for Water, most of the time, and this is how I explain it to most of my clients, or even just random people that I meet who just want a quick suggestion, I said, look, imagine a flowing river. Imagine by a riverbank. River's just flowing and going, right? Everything's going good. But all of a sudden, a big thunderstrike comes, knocks down a tree. Beautiful, right? Very majestic. But over time, if you come back a day, 2, 3 days later, what happens with that tree? It's collecting debris. It's collecting stuff that it never was intended that usually would be flowing down the river. And that's what we call toxins. So if you donate blood, that's the fire hose. It gets rid of the toxins real quick. If you stop putting them back in your body with all the synthetics where your body does not properly evacuate them through the lymphatic system, then with proper flowing or water, you can actually secrete them out normally just by going to the bathroom or sweating.
Yeah. Now, talking about water, What kind of water do you recommend your clients or you yourself drink?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that in a not a complicated way, but in a very educated way. The EWG, which is good, I wouldn't say they're not compromised because you can definitely see more lately than not that there's some things that are going on there, right? But
Yeah.
they do have that. If you look at a water bottle, they'll give you that little biohazard looking sign that has a number in between. One, you should always be drinking water that's at least on a 7 scale because that 1 is the most toxic plastic that's out there. It's basically petroleum in a container form. Okay. So I personally get for our house, and I'll go into the differences because the question is water, but then there's different scenarios of water as well. We get the 5-gallon jugs, which is in a class 7 container, which means that it has very minimal leaching and leaking. And we go through a company called LeBlue. So it's been, properly cleansed and it's all cleaned out and it's all spring water and it's all the great stuff. The problem even still with that is that it's manufactured because it's put through a process that's not cycled. Now, most water, if you are out in nature, is in direct exposure to sunlight, which are the natural antibacterial. And there's also running over rocks, and those rocks have quartz and zeolites and everything else that are in it, which is actually picking up or breaking down, which is why we used to use, for that matter, copper pipe. So it's breaking down all the bacteria naturally. So if you're getting water delivered to your house like I do, you want to put it into a 5-gallon borosilicate glass. I have city water at my house. It's kind of a joke, but it's really not. I don't even give my animals that water because we did the test on EWG and the reports aren't great. And I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. And I don't bring my dogs to the vet, and my dogs and my cats and my animals are never sick, ever. We give them great food, we give them great water. I mean, years have gone by and nothing's wrong with our animals because of how we treat them and what goes into their bodies. But when you get the water delivered in a 5-gallon jug, pour it into another borosilicate 5-gallon jug, leave it outside. And this is a little bit extreme, but it's going into your body. Because, I mean, if you don't pay for it now, you're going to pay for it later mentality. And you let it get sun exposure, and that means it will become structured. And just like it was regularly like going down a mountain or whatever it would be, as close as you can get to it, right? And then you'll drink it that way. Now, that's for home. Now, if I'm traveling, I'm just going about where I live, I'm buying a borosilicate 32-ounce jug that I usually carry. Like even like my coffee mug, for example, I only drink out of borosilicate glass. That's it. Because it's sand from a beach and it's all put together. And like even this right here, this is borosilicate and no leaching going on. And I'm always taking water from my house. Now, if I have to buy water outside, I'm only buying water that says artesian. That's it. That's ARTESIAN. And if you're looking at the labels, which everyone should be reading the labels all the time because they change all the time. We should be reading labels all the time. If you're getting water that's enriched with potassium or flavored with electrolytes, bad news. Because usually what they're adding in there is potassium. And what that usually will end up resulting in is that the whole cycle of the sodium potassium pump gets thrown off, which then starts a demineralization process or the imbalance within the body. And that starts a whole dehydration process that most people are not even aware of. I'm drinking so much water, but yet you're still dehydrated.
Yeah.
How many times have you ever heard that one, right?
They're drinking smart water, like with electrolytes.
Yeah, I'm like, stop. I go, so this is basically where I come down with most people when they ask a simple question. I said, look, wherever you're from in the world, there were people that were living there before us. So the easiest example for us in the States is the Native Americans. Mm-hmm. How did they live? Do that.
Yeah.
That's it. They got their water from streams. Now, we can't necessarily get our water from streams, but if you can have a choice of well water versus city water, you're definitely going well, for sure. If you do not have well water in the city water, what other options can you exhaust to bring that in? And so that's what I mean. Like I literally pay a couple $100 a month to make sure that we have enough gallons of water to drink because I'm just not going to put city water into my body knowing that what's in there.
Definitely.
And that's like a simple pathway as far as like my water.
Yeah. 'Cause, I mean, we got a whole house, filter, and my husband's like, "This is still plastic." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." We are in a well though.
Yeah, well's not. I mean, well is the best way. The only problem with well, if there was an issue with well, is just how it can get hardened. So you have to put
Yeah.
some different processes in there to make sure it doesn't get too hard. But besides that, it's perfect. It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally from the ground and from the quartz. That's the bedrock of where we are, anyways.
Totally.
And then the last part, what I did was, and it's going to sound introductory, but it's not, is synthetic vitamins are one, but then we developed our own mushroom product supplement line, which is whole food organic only. And what separates us from everyone else is that there's zero preservatives, there's zero fillers, and everything that's in there is natural, and it has a shelf life. And after the shelf life, you have to throw it away because it will go bad.
Yeah.
And the response that we're getting from our products and how fast they're helping people, and this is something we say all the time, and we have the absolute worst business model in the country. Worst. But we have the best business practice. And the reason why is because we're not pushing pills. We're only suggesting when you need them, as you need them. When you're done, it should be whole food only. So most of the time, I had one client who was on using my mushroom stacks for, I mean, gosh, I would say maybe 3 months max. Most are on one cycle, which is like 4 to 6 weeks, and they work so well, so quick, and it reverses diverticulosis, Crohn's disease, any kind of digestive issue. The lock-in that we have for energy and focus is off the charts as far as what it does. I mean, we call it the real-life NZT48 from the movie Limitless, and it's a fun product to play with because, I mean, you get dialed in. And what's key there, and what I focus a lot on, is I look at a lot of other people as far as practices, because no one knows everything. So what could improve? You never know who's going to walk in your door. So how could you help someone else as they're coming in?
Yeah.
And from that point, I'll look at, okay, how can this help them? Should I suggest it or not? I used the old form of muscle testing, which is the only original and probably the best way of testing anything anyways, because it's in real time and with that real person in relation to emotional disorders as well at the same time, as far as things that could have happened in their life they have a negative response to. But when you're looking at the grand scheme of things, the underlier precursor to all disease is magnesium deficiencies, iron overload, and copper deficiencies, period.
Yeah.
So now, when you look chemically, this is what my deficiencies does really, really well. In the baseline, when we put it all together, when we API'd all the different programs into it, was synergistically at a chemical level, because I don't know if you remember when I just mentioned the 3 modes of the body. There's a structural, the functional, and the chemical. Chemical is the higher the fractal, meaning that whether we're breathing it, we're tasting it, or we're ingesting it, there's a chemical response to the body, to everything else. And synergistically, there has to be something that's aligned. So when I mentioned a moment ago about potassium in water that has enriched electrolytes, well, that's going to throw off the sodium potassium pump. And it's also going to throw off calcium out of the gate. And you have to look at what's balancing those chemicals that are going in, because essentially that's really what they are. Because water alone is not enough to keep us alive. So you have to look at that. So when I include certain mushrooms in my mushroom stacks, I purposely make sure that it's lowering iron, because especially for females, because emails are told they're anemic all the time, and that's basically the biggest lie I've ever heard. I mean, if you look at the book by Jim Moon, Iron, the Most Toxic Element, or Ed Weinberg as the, Iron, the Most Toxic, Iron, I forget the name of that book, but it was Dr. Ed Weinberg. It was like 800 pages long, super interesting. It was all chemistry. But the baseline of it all was that the genetic predispositions that everyone thought there was are not true. It's all just a chemical response to an overload or an imbalance of chemicals in the body. So when you look at, for example, shiitake mushroom, which I use in almost all my mushroom stacks, the reason why I'm choosing that is because of the tyrosinase. Tyrosinase is a copper binding enzyme at a mycelium level, which automatically chelates the iron that could be stuck or lodged in the tissue, which frees it up, which means it can now be excreted. And it works really, really well. We had, I have a friend who's a practitioner down in Florida. He gave a referral to someone for the, which one? All About Movement, which is this one right here. And one of the first ingredients in there is shiitake, and it's also coupled with cordyceps. So he comes back and he goes, I only took one capsule the first day I got it, and I work at a nightclub. He goes, people were asking me like what I was on. I had so much energy, and I was laughing. And I said, so what did you tell him? He goes, mushrooms. I said, okay, did you say functional mushrooms? And he
Right.
was like, yeah, I did. So he showed him the packaging on it all, and but that's the key. Because it's synergistically aligning with the body out of the gate, it works that fast and that quick. So again, that's why I make that joke, going back to my last comment about we have one of the worst business models out there. We're not pushing pills. We're telling people to use this as a stopgap as they move into a functional, whole-based nutrition plan. Because ultimately, when we go back to what I talked about with the Native Americans, none of this existed. It was
Yeah.
literally all grown from the ground, or it was flowing from a riverbank. And that's what they drank, and that's what they ate. And that's what my practice is all about and how we put it all together.
But what about, I mean, ideally, right, we would be growing our own food on a live soil that you're taking care of. But most people are buying stuff from the grocery store, and the
Yeah.
soils are, dead and toxic. So how do
Yep.
we, kind of like cover the deficiencies from like the, what we're supposed to be getting from food?
This one's maybe a little bit hard to believe, but my wife and I, we wrote 14 books in 6 months. And we packaged it all up. And part of the nutritional planning that we put together for people, and there's 4 different models that we use there for because of different circumstances. In every book in the beginning, we tell people about the EWG, and we also show them why they're so great, but also what to watch out for. And we also then lead them understanding buying guides for food.
Yeah.
Now, I live in the state of North Carolina, and what's really interesting here is I have a lot of conversations with farmers, and they came back, and I said, organic, they go, you can't use that word. It's a federally protected, patented word. I said, no kidding. So they were walking me all the way through. Now, here in North Carolina, which is really interesting, is I guess the lobbyists here, I don't drink cow's milk, but I guess there is a big lobbyist group that they want their cow's milk to be protected. And you can't sell it to humans for whatever reason. I don't know if it's not pasteurized, that's what it is. So what they do here is they market it as dog milk. And
Yep.
they say, oh, by the way, if you want some, go ahead and get some, right?
Yeah.
Now, the word that I was told is regenerative farming. And then from there, when you're going, and I would normally recommend to answer the question is, if you need to go buy food because you know the food's pre-picked, it has to be shipped from A to B logistically, and it's probably not minimally dense and minimally light on nutrition side of things, or it was grown from grounds that has soil that are dead because it has some type of glyphosate or herbicide, insecticide, or pesticide involvement there.
Yeah.
All those fun things just to consider before you even go out but buy a food, right?
Yeah.
Is that regenerative farming has a retire plot of land, typically, where they do their rotations. And then once that retired land becomes open again, you want to ask the question, how long was it retired for? And then the second question you usually want to ask is, how did you compost and roll your soils to re-energize the soil for that matter? And those are the 2 leading questions for someone who's practicing regenerative farming. And so those are the areas where I would focus on for the most part. So we go to our local store and we know where the food is grown, or we go to a farmer's market and we know that they're practicing regenerative farming. We know the farmers who are buying food at stores and selling it as their own. And it comes down to, and I know it's not an easy button, and a lot of
Yeah.
people will say they don't have time for that. But what we will have time for, if you don't make time for that, is managing a medical bill or managing doctor's visits.
Yep. And you say,
In our culture right now, it's necessary.
yeah. I love that you say that it's not the easy button, and it's great. The easy button doesn't last.
Yeah.
Never
Yep.
lasts.
Exactly. And that's the hard part. And that was one of the reasons too, if you go back to my deficiencies, why I made it stupid simple to use. All the details are in the settings. So if someone wants to go read it, by all means. And so, for example, like we put together a blood donation ebook, and it's 25 pages long. Now, most people are not going to want to read 25 pages, especially in today's age. I mean, they barely pay attention to 3 seconds if you don't have a great social media hook, right? True.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what we
Internet
did
lying.
was we put together the quick hit on the one pager. So everything you would need would be on one page. But for those who are really interested and want to learn, because here's something that when I learned it, I went, holy crap. When we leave our legacy here, I mean, it's at least 2 generations deep. And if we don't stress to the next generation, basically our children, they're not going to pass it forward. And I mean, there's different circumstances, different generations. We have got to be cognizant, and that is an old pastime in some cases, but we can't forget that we have to be cognizant and aware of our choices. Because if not, we're going to be forced to manage something else that we weren't unprepared for. And it's a real conversation to have. And most people are like, come on, I'm like, seriously. And then when you start showing them the data and how long we've known about this data as far as food and what chemicals do what. And I mean, for example, if you read the book, Synthetic Use of Pesticides in Africa, that's basically where they tested out glyphosate. And if they knew that glyphosate wiped out glycine in food, which is essential for 23 amino function acids in the body, then they go, you kidding me? And glyphosate, GLY, glycine, GLY, see the alignment? I mean, you
Yeah.
can't make this stuff up. So the data is all around us. It's whether or not we're willing to pay attention to it or not.
Yeah, and it's also very buried. Like, they hide all like the truth that we really should know from us. I bet you if you try to search for that, it's probably in like the 100th page or something.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, like some of the information is very in your face. No, come on, that can't be true. And then some of it's suppressed.
Yeah.
And when we put together our course, we put together a course on how to overcome autoimmunity and ADHD. And again, I always make little jokes. I'm a big kid at heart, and I always call myself a syntopical learner. So I would go back in like Pelican Brief, Mel Gibson mode, where I'm literally string theorying things together. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Look at this, look at that. And I'm tying all these parts and stories and situations together. And I'm going, man, we've known for so long. And again, like most people, this is the first, again, Montrose Burrows, as I mentioned a moment ago, 4 studies. 1929, they won a Nobel Peace Prize for those collective studies on retinol and vitamin A. And they recognized at that point, if you can create a deficiency in vitamin A, you can create a model of cancer or something else in the body because of A. Now, when A goes down, D goes up. When D goes up, calcium proliferates, K doesn't get balanced, and all of a sudden you have heart issues. And we call it plaque from bad seed oils only, which is no, it's not true.
Yeah.
So again, there's multiple math equations, which is why I called it equation earlier, of how disorders happen in the body. And if we're not cognizant and just going and answering questions, or who was it? I was with someone the other day, and so we were talking about emotional distress. And they're like, well, what happens if you mix emotions? They go, look, you can eat and do all the right things, but if you have emotional distress and you basically just don't let go and let God, for example, just to kind of say it plainly,
Yeah.
then you will have similar, if not the same results. And they're like, why? I'm like, because of hepcidin and furin and how it reacts within the kidneys in relation to the liver and the emotional response that happens. I go, Chinese traditional medicine has known this forever. It's called meridian lines,
Yeah.
and we call it new science.
Right. It's very, yeah, they back in the day they already know so much, but then like I said, it's a lot of things get lost in translation or people are so distracted from too much information.
Right. Yeah. Well, here's something that's really interesting is when I was putting together our information for the autoimmunity course, the third leading reason of why people are in their current health state is because of information overload. And they don't know people really do not know what to do. And what's happening is, if you look at the synthetic supplementation market, it's absolutely booming. And the reason why is because someone's putting out a social media post saying, did you know that this one blank can do blank, blank, blank? And they're calling out the symptoms. And let's say it's like black seed oil. Black seed oil is great, solves a lot of problems, but all they're doing is painting over rust. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks great for, I don't know, like 3 weeks, and all of a sudden you see a little speck of rust coming through again. You're like, oh man, come on. That's all they're doing, because they're not solving the root cause, and because they don't understand why and how it's all happening to begin with. And that's what we had done. I literally give away like a free course. I'm like, look, go learn. Here's what it is. Not everybody, but a lot of people are just, no, it'll never happened to me. I feel so good. I'm too young, all that. But then all of a sudden it catches up quick because of compounding effects. And all of a sudden you go, well, now what do I do? Because it's not working quick anymore like when I was younger. And I'm sore now when I wake up every day, or I have a plantar fasciitis because of this is out of balance. And we look at all that holistically as far as what's happening and why. We had a client over 2 days ago, second visit, and she had all these, I won't even mention the company's name, but she was literally prescribed and suggested all these synthetics. I went, no, 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 no. There was 4 of them. She was taking a few peptides. I said, keep up with those. They actually will help you in this scenario. Eventually, we're going to wean those off as well, but those right now will actually act as a good versus a negative. And as soon as she stopped the other synthetic meds, and then she locked in the digestive orchestra, her distension in her belly went down, her gas went down by 50% in 1 day, and her energy went through the roof just by taking lock in because of the shiitake mushroom. She had a major response. She goes, how did you know? I said, look, you just have to know the chemistry. Once you know the chemistry, then she comes back, she goes, well, even my knee swelling went down. I said, sure, because if you look at the meridian line between the knee and the kidneys, if you're not properly digesting fats, which goes back to the stomach, then the response, the outwardly sign there and the symptoms in the knee. And she's like, oh my gosh. So she's just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I go, just enjoy it. Stop asking questions. That's what you hire me to do.
It's like they have to know why, but then when they're searching for all these answers, it's like it's time to stop looking for answers.
Yeah, that's it. And so what I'll do is I want to say I'll go down to like a 5th grade level, but I will say, what are your questions? How do you want me to answer them? And I'll slow down and I'll walk them through. And then over time, as we're having more and more conversations, throughout that one particular session, I'll start revealing more, suggestions, 1, and then 2, some realities that they're becoming more prepared for. Because right out of the gate, a lot of people are not prepared for those hard truths. But as they are becoming more awake in front of you, and literally in real time, they're going, I never knew. Why do they do that? Why is that allowed? And I go, this is why we have to pay attention to the people we vote for, or the different policies that are going on. I go, not to get all involved with that, because honestly, the simple answer to what I just said is you don't have to pay attention to any of it. You just have to make a good choice with your wallet, and they will stop. If you don't buy it, they're not going to produce it.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
That's it. That is the truth. But some people, it's hard to get everyone on board to do that because they're not suffering enough yet to actually try to make a change.
Yeah. It's funny because that's actually one of our cornerstone comments. What you tolerate, you get more of.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be any more truer, because people they'll tolerate a lot because they want to tough it out. Or my granddaddy's brother's brother, he didn't have this and he did okay, and is one of those. But again, the terrain was different. And so it's not the same. And again, it's one of those passed down stories over time. And is it really completely true? We have no idea. We're not there. It's just hearsay.
Yeah. So let's talk about, Because even before when I was reading your the one speaker sheet, you said that the healthcare system isn't broken, and then it's working exactly as it's designed, which is really true, right? But a lot of times too, you keep saying it's broken, but it's actually designed that way. Can you take us back? I mean, you've probably already shared this, that, that moment where you realized that, right? That it was actually designed to stay broken and to keep us stuck as patients.
Well, I'll tell you a story. I'll give you a couple different scenarios here, but I'll lead off with this one because this one I was shaking my head after I did it. I was working for a big company at this point, and I got a phone call in. Oh God, I think we did like 3 or 4 of their hybrid ORs. It was down in Florida, and I got a phone call back. Hey, we need you to come in and take care of something for us. We thought something was broken. So I went in there with my local service manager, and I was on the sales side. And I go, okay, what's something broken? Like, how can we help you? And he goes, no, we need to add a Cat 7 line. So a Cat 7 line is just an Ethernet line that goes, big cable that goes in the back of the computers, right? And I said, okay, cool. I go, what's this for? He goes, well, we need to add that into the room, and how much is it going to cost? Didn't answer the question yet. I said, oh, we'll just make it a service call. We'll charge you $1,200. Okay, cool. How fast can you get it done? Hey, do you have the Cat 7 line? He goes, yeah. I go, how many feet do you need? He goes, I need to go from here to here. So we measured it out. It was basically 25 feet. We had a 50-footer. So we took care of it right there, Johnny on the spot. Actually, the service manager was installing it. I'm sitting there with the customer saying, hey, so what's this for? He goes, well, we need to connect that to the PACS. And the PACS is the data portal for all patient information of how it was being concatenated and stored. Okay. And I said, okay, cool. I go, what's it for? Are you compliant? He goes, no. If we can connect the PACS, we can charge an additional $15,000 in our billing. Just by adding a line? He goes, yeah. I said, you're kidding me. Now, this was probably about 7 to 8 years ago, before anything AI was even released to the market.
Yeah.
So by adding the Cat 7 line to connect A to B, so on a business pro forma, they can say PACS was utilized during the service. They could charge an additional 50 or charge up to 15,000. Now, whether or not they get reimbursed for it is a different story. Most of the time they would knock it down, but they're making a couple extra $1,000. Now, you compound that, they're doing at least 4 cases a day in this one room, times the 7 days, times the 6 days, times the amount of months that you have on one line connection. So that one line connection that cost them $1,200, that was doing nothing. They just wanted to add it because they found a loophole, was adding an additional $100,000 or more based on how much they got reimbursed. And at that point, I realized that it's working exactly as designed because it's really a business. It's nothing less. It's nothing less. And when I go back to my original story, when I saw that poor woman, I didn't ask the question, but I pretty much realized that no one was helping her through her hardship and her journey. Because now I know most people say eat well.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. What does that mean? And then I learned in my own podcast when we had it was that there's less than most, not everywhere, especially now, because there's more ridicule on the medical arena as far as what they're being taught. But at that time, now my podcast was up 4 years ago, there was less than 1 credit hour of nutrition as part of their medical curriculum. And it was really awful. And then the other part of that, which a lot of people probably don't know, but met a really good friend. He was a doctor. His wife was also a doctor. And they were on the show and they were talking about the financial stranglehold that they would have after medical school. And what he did was he helped people get out of financial debt as a result of going through medical school. He goes, so one head count was at least 650 to 725,000. Most people got married. They found their partner in medical school, and they were leaving easily at $1.2+ million of acquired debt
Yeah.
And then you look at the financial stranglehold, and then you look at what they're doing as far as their practices. And I would ask them the questions offline, and I would say, is it really true that this is why they're looking for the kickbacks? He goes, Scott, without question, because they're so entrenched in debt. And then if you look at a regular PCP, what they were making before, like 425,000, it was now 250,000. I mean, sales reps were making more than doctors. And so
Wow.
the whole system is a 1948 propaganda issue, because they're all backwards. It really is all backwards. And so it's just, yeah. And then I'll give you one more. So I sat down with an architect, and a big architect firm, and they're the ones putting up the towers, especially down the southeast corridor of the country. And they came back and they said, well, there's a big push and big model. Now, this is probably about 18 months before the COVID years. And I said, okay, so what's significant? Well, the whole 80% of customers, patients, clients are dissatisfied with the system. I said, really? So we're going through the podcast, and we're talking about this data. And I said, so what is the next step? Like, what's going to happen next? She goes, well, interestingly enough, they're going to go back to more of urgent cares, of more community-based outlets. So now, if you look at where all these urgent cares are popping up and all these small little outpatient hospital centers are popping up, this is the reason why. Because people felt disdain up to an 80% for all these major buildings. And so they started offsetting a lot of those smaller services to these smaller buildings. And then they started bringing in all these interoperative CTs, MRs, gantry systems for all the hybrid space, because the uptick on cardiovascular, neurological, and cancer was off the charts. I mean, it's up over 600%. So I didn't know this at the time, but what I was talking about in my podcast was a precursor to what's actually happening now. When I realized all that, going back to your question, I go, my gosh, this is all planned. I have the data.
It's insane. So
Yeah.
that's, I mean, my my mind's not really blown, because I'm not surprised, because I've been a skeptic for a while. But yeah, that is very, you know, I hope that makes someone listening just realize that, right? Because a lot of times people who get like gaslighted by doctors, right? They eventually like see like, oh, the Western medicine's not going to help me. But then once they try to seek out the functional or the alternative modalities, then they find out they can't use their health insurance, and then they complain
Right.
that it's expensive. But then they don't think about that part where, okay, if you didn't have health insurance, you would have been paying out of pocket. And then what is the cost of you staying sick? Like, what would it be in the long run, right? They are seeing it as an
Yeah.
expense instead of as an investment on themselves and on their health. So hopefully,
So I'll tell you a quick story. On the corporate side of my business, we go out and we do wellness optimization for corporations.
okay.
Now, my pitch to a COO or a CFO of a 100 person, or it doesn't have to be 100 person, it could be like a 25 person company or more. But the second largest expense of any company outside of payroll is healthcare.
Yeah.
Now, if they're offering healthcare to their employees, I go and I say, I can lower your healthcare costs by 40% or more. Here's how. And they go, 40%? They go, 40%. Now, if you aggregate that over 5 years on 100, now I'm being conservative with my number here, but if you aggregate that over 5 years, that's about $800,000 a year, not even thinking about it. And that's only at a 40% utilization. I can easily get that to 60, 65%. That's over but that's over 1.2 easily. And I can do it for less than $200 per head. When I put that all together, they're going, how are you doing this? I said, you can't solve the problem unless you know the chemistry of how it started to begin with.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'll do is we'll have our meeting, and the first thing I'll do is I'll go to a trash can. All the trash ends up in the trash can. You'll see Bojangles, you'll see Chick-fil-A, you'll see all these quick stops, right? So what I did was, just to have some fun, I go, okay, let's do the science. So you lead off with a conversation saying, if you knew that food did X, Y, and Z, would you eat it? And they go, of course not. No, I would never eat something like that. Okay, boom. Here are the ingredients. Here's who sells it. Here's who you're buying. How do I know? I went to your trash can. Here's a picture of pop. And they're going, oh my gosh. And so now I'm having fun. But at the same time, it's a wake-up call, because those people in that room know what they bought and how they bought it. So now I go with my deficiencies, and I literally just asked my developer today, just so I wouldn't have to deal with any PHI stuff, is I asked them to put a restore key inside the app. That way, if I'm doing a presentation to a large group, I can say, okay, here's your restore key. Without sharing your information, enter in any synthetic or medication that you've been prescribed. Those are the deficiencies that are silently being depleted from your body. Now compound that over the amount of time that you've been taking it. We then play a game and we say, okay, look at the functional impact score. Are those the symptoms, not the side effects, the symptoms that you're going through? 100% yes.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, now let's look at an alternative. And I said, if we were to correct this, this, and this based on what I've revealed, because you have to know the chemistry of how it's happened to begin with, and we reverse that, they go, oh my gosh. The eye-opening effect is night and day. They cannot believe it. And so what it comes down to, a lot of times, and I don't want to say conveniences, but time. And this is where it's really important for, I think, to include myself, where we have to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of people are so used to just grabbing and going when it comes to food or what they're putting into their mouth, or even drinking with alcohol. Yep. Stop for a second, slow down. Just ask, do I really need to eat? Or am I bored? Am I in distress? Is something emotional going on? There's a lot of things that are happening. But if you just take a moment just to say, do I really need this right now? Most of the issues that people are facing will probably go away or never happen to begin with. That's how simple it is. So when you start bringing that mindset adjustment to large groups and organizations, they go, now how do we implement it? And then you give them the algorithm or the equation of how to implement that into their organization. That's how you do it. So from an organizational standpoint, corporately, we're leading large groups to make significant change so they can reduce their healthcare costs. But then on an individual level, for those who may be home or just want to take their own ownership for their own health and not to be dependent, or maybe their corporation doesn't offer healthcare insurance, whatever the situation may be, there's options that are out there that are natural and sustainable where they no longer need to go to the doctors anymore. Or if they do, and one of the games I play, another one, I always like playing games. I told you I was a big kid. I go, considering that most of you doctors have less than 1 credit hour of nutrition during school. Now, post-school, they may have taken additional courses and everything else. Go bring the app out there and say, well, if this medication's depleting this nutrient, what should I do? What should I eat instead? They won't know.
Yeah.
They won't. They're gonna go up. They're gonna have like an Austin Powers moment, going, "What do you mean?" So,
yeah.
And that's the point. And one of the comments I say just here locally in my own clinic is I'll say, the fastest way of knowing if the person who you hired or your doctor knows what they're talking about is ask them this one question. Do you suggest vitamin D? If they say yes, ask for your money back, walk out the door, and never return. If they say no, stick around for the next question. That's it.
Yeah.
And they go, are you kidding me? I said, no. I said, choline. I literally just saw a post and I was so proud of the person who put it on there because she had a lot of followers and she was pretty much risking losing her Instagram account. I mean, she had over, I think 120, 130,000 followers. And she posted that the choline that they were using in vitamin D was the same chemical compound as rat poison. And I was like, bravo, well done. Now what happens? So we'll see. We'll see where the algorithms go at this point, because that's really what's going on. So creators at a social media level who really do believe in holistic health and want to really truly help people, creativity has to be off the charts because they have to figure out a way of how to revealing the truth without actually saying it.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw someone do like well, it was a conspiracy that she was sharing though, but she was pretending that she was making a salad and she had like paper with like, the handwritten thing on the I'm like, oh, that's kind of smart way to do it. If there's I know that there's certain words that like red flag, red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's the thing, the AI out there now is getting so smart. I mean, if you look at VO3 from Google, for example, it can generate these images, which means they can also understand the images as well.
Yeah.
So because you can create it, you can also understand it. So we have to be cognizant of that at the same time, which is why I believe the only real answer out for the most part is either communities or probably email lists for that matter. But
Yeah.
again, not a lot of people are not reading. There's a lot of information going out there. That's why we started our own community. We started a community in school.com. It's been great. And again, we teach people 2 basic free courses on our Stand store, which is, I mean, they get a lot of, I mean, we information dump. We say, here's what's real, here's the data, here's the proof. That's it. And then we basically guarantee for the most part that when people go through for 4 months, whatever they're dealing with is gone by the time they're done. If there's something that's just atypical, we'll have a conversation with them and I'll have like a real conversation saying like we can or can't help you or there's something we're not able to tackle based on where they are and the length they've been dealing with that. But for the most part, most of the issues that people are led to believe, and that's a really important statement, led to believe,
Yeah.
or it's a genetic thing, or it's not genetic. I go, were you born that way? All of a sudden, this gene mutation popped up. Like this guy, Gary Brecka, that was out there. I mean, God, I know a couple people that are really well off, and they said, just stay away. And I remember correlating, I was watching a video, so I was having my Mel Gibson moment where I was string theorying things together. And he was talking about his experience with X and how it's 10X health. And then all of a sudden he went out and he wouldn't sell his whole gene mutation test and exam. I'm going, okay, so here's a guy who actually, if he really did work where he worked, saw all the data and he was withholding it unless you paid $1,600 or went through this exam and this test, which was just ChatGPT for that matter. I'm going, man, but he went to Wall Street and did a $73 million raise. How do I know? And that, by the way, that's the only question that matters is how do you know? Is he went on Patrick Bet David show and said, yeah, my wife and I went to, after we broke apart from 10X and did a $73 million raise. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So you just know who's in. And then you look at like what's going on. I mean, what was interesting there too is you know who's in with who is politics to politics. Trump won, but then who's on stage with them? And then who's in alignment with those people, and then who's in alignment with those people, and you can just like watch who's having discussions with each other, and that's how you know like who's in cahoots and who's not in cahoots. It's pretty simple. So I know earlier you said that a lot of information suppressed. It's really not. It's just a lot of people are not paying attention, or they don't know who's next, or it's just a matter of just who's standing next to who's agreeing to meet with who, and why.
Yeah. And the thing is, a lot of people gets blinded by their emotions.
Sure.
In my opinion, politics wise, they're just 2 sides of the same coin. It's like
Of course they are. Yeah.
two,
There's no 2 different colors. There's one color.
yeah, exactly. 2 wings, same bird. But then, because I was born and raised in the Philippines, so I came here and everyone's like, "Are you a Democrat or a Republican?" I'm like, I'm nothing. I'm like, and because you think about it, whatever your parents are, usually that's what you choose, right? You kind of don't try to research on your own and find out what's really the truth. And so a lot of times people get blinded by their emotions, but it's like kind of like with the medical system, it's designed that way because they want us to be at war with each other, not seeing the real enemy.
My position on that, for the most part, and a lot of people laugh at me when I tell them, I said, look, take your cut and leave me alone. I'm self-sufficient. I'm self-resilient. I'll take care of me and my family. Questions? Right? Bueller, anybody. So that's basically how simple I get to it.
That's the truth. Or I'm like, we're going away from health, but I always say, I'm like, if only everyone will stop paying their, you know, the
Yeah, yeah.
government's cut, and they can't do anything about it because everyone's doing it.
That's what Billy Carson was saying. When I don't know if you know Billy Carson, but he was the Anunnaki alien guy, and he was like, no, the simplest way, because he actually said one statement that he caught my attention, and he goes, once we take capitalism out of healthcare, then that paradigm will change. And I said, somebody, I agree with that, because I was inside. I was a CapEx insider. I knew what it meant.
Yeah.
I mean, on one deal, for example, just to give everyone an idea, if I sold $1 million deal, now my education was a little bit different when I left high school. I literally graduated with an architectural degree. I went through 3 years of architecture in high school. Then I went to college and I had a kinesiology background. So, I mean, I have the education. That's me. Now, most people who are hired at this company that I'm thinking about that I didn't mention yet is they don't have the health background. They may have a little bit, like a twinge here or there, but for the most part, they're just being trained. That's it. And their congruency, and they would use a big company like a Gallup, or where they do like a central census to find out, like, is this a good fit for your company, because they want a certain person or a different certain model of person to work for them.
Mm-hmm.
You would have to be congruent to make sure that they were going to be in line with the company's values. And most companies do that anyways, if for good hires. They have higher retention and all that kind of stuff. So when you looked at all that all together, you aggregate all that information together, those people had zero idea clinically what was really going on. Now, I brought up the question, how much are they really getting paid? They were getting 7%. So if they're selling $1 million deal, do the math. And zero experience or knowledge that was actually going into healthcare. And it's really disturbing, because you would think that these companies would have, higher standards when it came to that. And for the most part, it's kind of like the doctor, then the PA, then the RNA, all the way down under one license. It's the same model with these other big companies. They have a leader, and then they'll teach and they'll teach, and it just breaks down that pyramid cycle. But this is really what's going on in healthcare that a lot of people have no idea. And it's about time that people noticed and paid attention. I can't say this because I've been there. And for the most part, once people have their eyes shut and they're under twilight or anesthesia, it's a party. I mean, there's some doctors that keep it calm, cool, and collected, especially in pediatrics for the most part. But the designing those rooms, take a guess at what the number one concern was out of the top three. I'll tell you all three of them, but the top concern.
Tell us.
What kind of speakers am I getting in my ceiling?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They're spending so much time inside the OR. They go, I don't want those speakers. They sound like crap. I want Bose instead. Now, I understand, because they're there for a long time, especially in the cardiovascular world. I mean, those surgeries, easy 4 to 6 hours minimum. And then it's, where are my monitors placed so they can see? Now, they're not watching TV. It's actual data information, and the graphics are very important in those spaces. And then the third one is teleconferencing, which is really, really important, because sometimes they would need to dial in a friend, if you will. If something was going wrong, they would dial in another doctor, so they can. This is actually really cool with this type of technology, but they wouldn't have to break scrub. They wouldn't have to take off and have to go to an office or then come back. So they could actually dial somebody in conference, or if they needed to hold or just be aware of something. And this is where it started getting a little sideways. If there was something that they weren't supposed to bring into the OR, sometimes they would, because why not? They had the technology. But the number one concern, speakers. How good is the sound? And where are the baffles so it's not refractive?
Hey, priorities.
You got them. That's it.
All right. Well, we're running out of time, so I'm just gonna ask you last question. If you
Sure.
could speak directly to someone who's on the verge of giving up hope, what would you say so that they believe that healing is still possible?
donate blood, stop synthetics, drink some water, and fast.
And
All
fast.
free and
Yeah.
fast. And a lot of people now are pulling what I call a Jesus Christ, which means that they fasted for or attempted to fast for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that's going to cure it all, and I'm not recommending that you fast for 40 days and 40 nights, especially without supervision, because that's a hard thing to do, right? But if you fast appropriately and you take those other measures and basically stop eating like a foolish person, because that's really what it is, and just start paying attention to what you're putting in your body, most of your issues will start to resolve themselves. The issue comes here is, I mentioned this a few times, this one phrase, compound effect. You didn't get there overnight. So give your body a chance to also, I mean, look at the amount of time it took you to get to that position. Give yourself equivalent amount of time, but it'll start responding pretty fast to get out of that condition as well. Just give yourself a chance, because once you go in with a knife, there's no going back. And my best example would be that if you have, let's say you have a torn meniscus. Now, you can heal a torn meniscus without having, I mean, you have to do certain things to make sure that you don't rip it up. But if you have a torn meniscus and you start nicking it off with, all of a sudden that protected joint starts slipping, and that automatically goes to a PCL or an ACL. Oops, and that starts moving around, and that starts getting to the hyaline cartilage. So now you have meniscus, hyaline cartilage, and integrated ligaments. Then it goes to LCL, MCL, and then the capsule. Then all of a sudden we're looking at a total knee based on a meniscal injury that you could have healed on your own if you gave it the right conditions to heal.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a really important way or framework of understanding. And that's why we have time off at work, or, I mean, you can offload it, things of that nature. I mean, I mentioned that because I did it myself. I had a torn meniscus and I healed it myself without having to go get surgery.
Yeah.
I'm 50 years old. It's not supposed to happen when you're 50. I did it. It took me a month. Done.
Nice. Yeah. Give it time. I always say that you didn't get here overnight. It will take time. You'll get relief, but then it will take time to fully undo everything that has been done.
Yeah. The other thing I would add to that too is, as we change, not get older, but as our body changes, our conditions change as well. I cannot stress enough range of motion and strength training.
Yeah.
And I'm talking strength training in positions that are uncomfortable. So like mace bars are great, kettlebell bells are great. Anything that what you would call like a PNF pattern, so what they call a proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, which is a nice, big, long, confusing word for full body movements. So if you put a PNF pattern together, and my number one recommendation all the time to everybody is, I go, how did you learn to walk? And they go, I got up. I go, no. How did you learn to walk? They go, okay, I crawled. Right. What's the adult form of crawling? Bear crawling. Get on your hands, get on your feet, and bear crawl up and down a hill, or straight away. They go to a football field and bear crawl. When you look at the coordination and then the lymphatics working in to that whole thing, it's an incredible skill set, and it burns off a significant amount of calories. It engages the entire body and the entire fascial network, and it works like a charm every single time.
I'm going to make my kids do that every day.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I mean,
thank you so much.
Bear crawling's cool.
Yeah, I'm going to make them, that will be their PE.
Yeah, right?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for being here. Remind us where our listeners can find you. Of course, we're going to be putting everything in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So to keep everything simple, if you go to Scott E. Burgess, so Scott with 2 T's, E for Edward, Burgess, BURGESS.com, that will bring you to my bio link, which has access to absolutely everything. Or if it's rhizomaticgardens.com, which is a rhizome for a mushroom, there as well, you can get access to everything. But scotteburgess.com is the best place to go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.
Of course. All right. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please click the subscribe button, share it with others, post about it in social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me or suggest topics, you can follow me on Instagram at Fatima Pagtakhan or at The Wellness Rebel Show. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.